Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. RCMP have issued an update after a Kelowna teen was swarmed and attacked by a group of teens. Video of the incident has been making the rounds in the community. We'll hear a bit of that RCMP press conference. And we're asking you, how do you talk to your kids about an attack like this? And we'll talk about public transit in this provincial election. After 12:30, Port Coquitlam Mayor Brad West will join us. And we'll ask you, what are the transit needs you want addressed in the BC election? I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. We are learning more about an attack on a 13-year-old girl in Kelowna's Boyce Gyro Park last Friday. The RCMP held a press conference this morning and said that 5 people, all under the age of 18, were directly involved in the attack. They said 3 youth have been arrested in connection. All 3 have been released from custody under strict conditions. None of the youth are being identified. We hope to hear from a clip from that RCMP press conference from this morning. RCMP also say that they're reviewing other nearby surveillance video as part of the investigation. Yesterday, the police issued a statement saying that they responded to several incidents of criminal offenses committed by youth that in that area on that night. Now, CBC News is not showing the whole video, but has reviewed it. It does involve a girl being surrounded by a number of other teenagers. There's a verbal altercation, and then the girl is thrown to the ground, punched in the head by multiple people, after which she has dirt or sand thrown on her. The father, who CBC is not identifying to protect the identity of the victim, spoke to CBC this morning.
She's physically healing, obviously sore. Tough kid, man. Mentally, she's seeing help. She started therapy and whatnot, so she's got a long road ahead of her. I doubt you could walk past my daughter at the breakfast table right now without her shivering.
We'd like to hear from you. What is your reaction to this? How do you talk to your child about an attack on a teenager? What are the conversations that you have to have with your kids? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me right now is Jillian Roberts, University of Victoria Professor of Educational Psychology and author, as well as founder of Mind Key Health. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
You take a psychology approach to this. What was your reaction upon hearing what happened?
I was really sad, and I felt so deeply for the family, for the father. The father speaking out in the way that he did, I want to commend him for his courage, because his daughter will see how much he cares for her and how much he wanted to bring attention so that these types of events don't happen again.
Is there an increase? Kelowna RCMP have said that this is the second such attack this year. Are we just hearing more about these kinds of incidents, or is there an actual increase? What's your sense?
I believe there's an increase. Like over the course of my career, there's no question that there's been an increase in all forms of bullying, whether it be online bullying or in-person bullying. We're in a mental health crisis, and our children are suffering. One of the things that we know is that hurt people hurt people. So there must be, for young people to be behaving in this way, there must be widespread anguish amongst this community for something like this to even occur. So by speaking out and for getting the news coverage that it's getting, it helps us all to understand that we need to take better care of our children and support them better, so that these things don't happen again.
What do you think parents can take from this? I mean, you hear this kind of story, this kind of incident, and obviously we all think of our kids, and first, oh my goodness, what would happen, if that were my kid? But also, oh my gosh, I would be loath to think that any kid I know would be involved in something like this. What are the conversations that parents can be having right now?
Well, I think parents can have three important conversations. So, one important conversation is around supervision. I need to know where you are. I need to know who you're with. If you're leaving one location to go to another location, I need you to text me. I need to know that. So, even though teen children have bigger bodies and they look like they're
Hmm.
getting close to being adults, they still are children and they still need supervision. So that would be one. The second is about what does it mean to be a good citizen? What does it mean to treat others with the same respect that we would want to be treated with? And how can we go out into the world and be the best versions of ourselves? And then I think the third is, what can you do if you're a bystander? What can you do if you see something horrible happening? What are the different ways that you can step up and be courageous and help? You know, one of those children could have stepped away from that group and called 911. They could have called their mom or dad. They could have asked for help. And so going over with your children what to do in these types of situations builds integrity and it helps young people know the difference between right and wrong.
Let's take a call now. Again, in Kelowna, RCMP investigating after an attack on a teen girl was caught on camera. It's been circulating online. This happened Friday at Gyro Beach Park. The 2-minute video shared with CBC by the family shows a large group of young people surrounding a girl. And at one point, another girl appears to grab the teen by the hair and pull her to the ground. CBC News is not identifying any of the youth involved here. We're asking you, what are your conversations that you're having with your kids when it comes to an attack like this? How do you try and instill those values of civility and what it means to be a bystander? What we just heard there from our guest, and in terms of what how you approach this with your own kids and how you're processing this news. Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. My guest is University of Victoria Professor of Educational Psychology, Jillian Roberts. Janice is on the line at Qualicum Beach. Hi, Janice. Thanks for calling.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I'm really appalled by what's happened. I think that it shouldn't be shown over and over on social media. And my number one comment is that all these bullies, they should be watching this film on Rena Verk, what happened in Victoria many years ago. That story still continues to need to be told, and I think that all these bullies should be sat down and watched this movie to see how this affected everybody in the community.
Yeah, it obviously still stays with you. And this was Rena Verk was a 14-year-old who was beaten and killed by a group of teenagers in Saanich. This was in the late 90s. And you're
That's
right. I
right.
mean, you say her name and it evokes those emotions of, what happened to this girl, to Rena. And why do you think this is still, that story still stays with you, Janice?
Every time I hear something like this, it just comes up.
Yeah.
And when that happened, my whole family was devastated. I mean, I didn't know Rena Verk, but just how children can just be so mean, and so I just don't understand it. Where they get this from, where they get this meanness from.
It's interesting, though, you say you're referring to a film about her, even coverage about her, that kind of awareness, perhaps, of previous incidents and what kind of harm that does to even a community, right? Even people who see the news, what impact that might have on kids if they're old enough to sort of process it, and what impact that might have on their behavior, knowing how harmful it may be.
Yeah, I think it should be in the media again with this, a little reminder, because
Jan,
this could have gone wrong.
yeah. Janice, thank you very much for the call.
Well, thank you for having me.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Yes, so Jillian Roberts, people think about the Rena Verk case. You know how when and she brings it up, is that something that perhaps can be brought into the conversation to say, look, this is the kind of thing that can happen. It becomes deeply embedded in people's consciousness, and you affect someone's life, loss of life in Rena Verk's case, her family, her mother, who spoke out in the aftermath of that case. Just how far-reaching that impact can be.
Well, that was exactly my first thought when I learned of this, that we need to remember our past so that we don't do those same things over and over again. But absolutely, this type of violence, it doesn't only affect the child, but her parents, her family, her community, all of us that watch and care about her, all of her schoolmates. And then at some point, the perpetrators, if they grow up to be mature adults, they are going to feel shame and they are going to hurt themselves through guilt and for being a part of this, or perhaps by just simply watching and not doing anything. So it's like a ripple effect of anguish that occurs in our community. And by talking about it, by raising awareness, by the fathers speaking out, by news agencies giving this time, like coverage time, these are the ways that we help make things better.
Now, Janice also mentioned that video should not be shown on social media over and over. What we did hear from Kelowna RCMP in their statement was that this is a statement from them yesterday. Police want to remind individuals that obtaining video evidence or forwarding it or posting it to the internet when it is for the intended purpose of humiliation or degradation of someone else is unacceptable. Any video capturing evidence of a criminal offense should be reported immediately to the police and not circulated publicly. So that coming from Kelowna Central Okanagan RCMP. So that was an interesting point that Janice brought up there regarding the video that has been circulating in the community. We actually have a call from Kelowna right now, and Michelle is on the line. How are you talking about this, Michelle?
I'm angry at the moment, and I'm needed to call to express my anger because I don't want to sit in it. And I appreciate your conversation. I was listening as you were speaking about compassion for the perpetrators, and I'm trying to feel that, and I'm just angry. I feel, as somebody who grew up in Kelowna and was bullied, that I want the parents outed. I want their faces out because I feel like there is an element of violence that is almost bred into some people, and this can't continue. This cannot continue. This violence among the youth, it's growing, and it comes from somewhere.
I appreciate this is bringing up, obviously, some trauma for you.
I suppose so. I guess that would be my anger, right? I'm just tired of protecting perpetrators. We all have trauma. Everybody has trauma, and it's a choice not to act on it. This girl who was just victimized, in the future, she's going to have a choice, and she's getting help. If she was to perpetrate, she should be just as guilty because it has to stop somewhere. There's no excuse. Whatever you've been through, it has to stop somewhere. So as we go through this, I really do want to see accountability. We had a boy in Rutland murdered, same sort of act of violence when he ran out into the street. This is growing. When are we going to hold accountability so this stops?
Accountability. Michelle, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate you calling us and expressing yourself, as you say, not to sit in your anger.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jolene, what do you think of that? So accountability, how far do you go with that?
Well, I think the police are going to be in the best position to decide how far to go with that. But if you take a moral lens, these are still children. They don't have fully functioning executive functions. They're not mature in their brains yet. And parents must take the time to talk with their children about what is right and what is wrong, what it means to be a good citizen, what it means to have a moral compass. Um, and those conversations should start when children are very young, and then continue and deepen and um, be contextualized as the children become older and older. Not talking about something like this because it's embarrassing or hard or awkward is the wrong decision. Parents need to face difficult conversations as soon as possible, and help their children grow and become good citizens. Um, I really felt like it resonated with me, the comment about not reposting things. Um, we should never like or um, repost, share something that is mean. And there's an acronym that I like to use when I'm working with children, and the acronym is THINK. So the T stands for, is it true? The H, is it helpful? The I, is it important or inspiring? N, is it necessary? And K, is it kind? So before sharing something or reposting something, think through the think, think through the think, and question whether it's a good idea to press that send button or that share button before you do it.
Yeah. What impact do you think social media has had on kind of perhaps acting without thinking, desensitizing and being more impulsive, I guess?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the anonymity that some people can have, right? So if you're participating online under a pseudonym, and trolling or being mean or aggressive, um, and if there's that sense of being anonymous, it's almost like there's no consequences for you. But it's important to remember that integrity means doing the right thing, even when no one is watching.
Yannick is up next now in Langford. Hi, Yannick. What's your reaction to
Hi.
this story?
Yes. First thing first, my heart goes to the father and that poor young girl that has received these injuries, and it's probably going to mark her for life now because, when you have such a traumatizing experience, it doesn't disappear. You're going to learn to cope with it through counseling, but it's never something you're going to forget. And now, unfortunately, these poor people will have to live with this for the rest of their lives. And I think, I was actually terrified when I heard about this, literally in shock and terrified that such young people are capable of being desensitized to violence to the point of being able to carry out these type of actions. Similar to what happened to that poor boy who got beaten by another group of youth, even younger, with the scooter. Like, I don't remember exactly when in time that happened, but it's just a few years back, I believe.
You have kids yourself.
And yeah, and so that reminds me of these other incidents. And
Yeah.
it's hard for me to comprehend how, young people, like there's, to me, no such thing as bad young people. They're just learning. So the influence has to start and come from somewhere. And I remember when I raised my kids, and they were first experiencing laying hands on other people, like fighting and pulling hair. It's the small stuff, but we made them understand right away what kind of hurt they were committing to other people, and tried as well to make them understand, how would you feel if this was done to you? And immediately they understood because they were able to relate. Oh my goodness, like if somebody did this to me, that would hurt. And then they would start, they would react. They were young. They would cry. They would be showing empathy. We're like, no, I cannot do this.
Yeah.
And they learn.
Yannick, it sounds like a good conversation to have had with your kids. Thank you so much for the call. I'm going to squeeze in one more from Linda and Nelson. Bullying. You want to talk about bullying, Linda?
Yes. I actually have two neighbors that have been bullying me for probably close to 15 years, and I really believe bullies are bred by bullies. And I was going to mention Rena Verk. I believe these young people that did this should have some sort of blemish on their record. I think that just having counseling and saying, "Oh no, that's not a good thing," I don't think that's enough. And I really feel for this girl because this young girl's going to be looking over her shoulder all the time.
Linda.
And something that a friend did is really low. So I think there has to be more than conversation. I think there has to be something more serious.
Linda, thank you very much. And as I mentioned, the RCMP said that 5 people, all under the age of 18, were involved. According to the RCMP, 3 have been arrested and have been released from custody. None of the youth are being identified. And as you said, Jillian, they're youth right now. Can we talk, I have about a minute left, about solutions. Let's look at what are the broader solutions we can implement?
Well, I want to first of all send a message to the girl that there's nothing that she did that caused this. There's no way she's at fault in any way. That she will get through this. She can be resilient, and she and her family together can overcome this. That's an important message for her to hear. Secondly, I think we need to talk about what a moral compass is, what it means to be a good citizen. It needs to be embedded in our curriculum, in conversations around the dinner table, with coaches, with players on the soccer pitch or the ice rink. But every adult that has influence over a child should take that to help the child be a good person.
Moral compass. We'll leave it at that. That's a good point to end with. Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Dr. Jillian Roberts, UVic Professor of Educational Psychology. It is now 12:28, and coming up after 12:30, we're going to turn our attention to the BC election and public transit promises. My guest will be Port Coquitlam Mayor Brad West. Now, Metro Vancouver mayors are pushing to make transit a big issue in this election. North Vancouver District Mayor Mike Little says North Van residents are worried about transit, and they have found that a majority would consider the issue in how they cast their ballot.
Obviously, we have broad transportation challenges. I think you highlighted it at the top of the news there about getting on and off the North Shore. All it takes is one small accident, and we don't have any routes around. And so everybody's trapped in the bridge traffic, as it were. But for transit, we have a tremendous number of people coming to the North Shore for work, and it's getting harder and harder for them to have a reliable, fast route to be able to get to the North Shore for work. And so we need to see some significant investment in transportation and specifically in transit in order to be able to grow with the community.
That's North Vancouver District Mayor Mike Little speaking on the Coast yesterday. We'll ask you in the next half hour, what are the transit problems you want addressed in this election? Perhaps you live on the North Shore. So that's after 12:30. And for more on the 3 main parties in this BC election and the issues and their stances on them, you can actually go to our website, cbc.ca/BC. There's an interactive feature there. And don't forget, October 8th will be a televised debate between the 3 major party leaders. That's Tuesday, October 8th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And you can watch that on TV, Radio 1 as well. You can listen on YouTube, TikTok, and CBC Gem. Right now, it's time for the CBC News with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. Police in Kelowna say 3 young people have been arrested in connection to a group beating of a 13-year-old girl in a city park. They have all been released from custody. RCMP say 5 people, all under the age of 18, were directly involved in the attack. The girl was assaulted Friday night as her assailants were egged on by a cheering crowd, many of whom filmed the incident. The girl is recovering from her injuries, but her father says she is badly shaken. A man reported missing in Kamloops September 23rd has been found dead. Police are now trying to piece together the events leading up to the discovery of his body. His name and cause of death have not been released. And a correction to an item about the Green Party platform that we reported at this time yesterday. We reported that the Greens are promising to double property tax rates for homes valued at more than $3 million. In fact, the Green platform calls for a doubling of the school tax rate for homes valued over that amount. The rate is set each year by the province and is charged via annual property tax notices. And now the forecast on the north coast, a mix of sun and cloud this afternoon with a high of 13, highs around 3 with a slight chance of showers or flurries in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, showers with a high of 10, highs from 15 to 18 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, some sun and cloud with a high of 15. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, lots of sunshine this afternoon with highs around 15 as well. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
It's Robert Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Now, yesterday on the show, my guest was Matea Roach, host of the new CBC show Bookends, and that airs actually on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. So today, right after our show, you can tune in for Matea and Bookends, also on Sundays at 3 p.m. Of course, you can go to CBC Listen and listen to the podcast. We asked for your recommendations for Matea, for books that you are reading right now and enjoying. Catherine wrote in to say, The Librarianist, how apt, by Patrick DeWitt is a hilarious novel about a quiet librarian, and it's all about loss, love, relationships, and it is so funny I could not put it down. Layla wrote, I'd like to recommend On the Ravine by Vincent Lam. It's fiction, but it's written by Lam, who's a doctor working with addicts, and it's allowed me to understand more fully the life of an addict and how they got addicted. I highly recommend it. Deanna writes, I am currently reading The Night Before by Lisa Jackson. I have 5 books lying in wait by different authors to get to. And we also asked you if you could meet an author, who would it be? And she tells us it would definitely be Stephen King. I read him always. I have shelves and shelves full of his work. Okay, thank you very much. That would be very scary for me to have Stephen King books all around me. And we got this other email too. I'm excited to read Malcolm Gladwell's new book, Revenge of the Tipping Point. I've read most of his 30 plus books. I've enjoyed them all. So he would be one of the authors I would love to meet and chat with. Thank you very much for that. Lots of emails for sure. bctoday@cbc.ca. Just over 2 weeks until the provincial election now, and the party leaders, as you've been hearing in the news, they're making their rounds, they're making their campaign promises. Meanwhile, mayors in Metro Vancouver want to put public transit on the table. Here's what we've heard from the provincial party so far on transit. The BC Green Party actually issued their election platform yesterday, and that includes a pledge to make public transit free. And yesterday, the NDP promised a rapid bus service from the North Shore to Burnaby. The BC Conservatives say they would address TransLink's growing deficit. Well, you can call us now. What are the transit needs that you want addressed in the BC election, wherever you live in the province? Call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining me now is Brad West, Mayor of Port Coquitlam and Chair of the Metro Vancouver Mayors Council. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us, Mayor West.
Thank you for having me.
Well, what do you think of what you've heard so far in this election on transit?
Well, it's good that it's being discussed because it is an urgent need in the Metro Vancouver region. You know, we have gone through a period of unprecedented population growth. Much of that, of course, is being driven by federal decision making. And our transit system has simply not caught up to the growth that we're seeing, particularly in some parts of the region where The development and growth has been so significant, and yet the transit service has not been there. And so, in the absence of that, of course, what you see is people become more reliant upon their vehicle to get around, which leads to increased congestion and a whole bunch of other issues. So, I'm pleased that we're starting to see the parties identify various things that they would do with respect to transit and transportation. I think we still need to see more details, and we still really need to hear about what they plan to do about the most significant issue, which is that TransLink is reliant upon a broken funding model. And what it means is that even if the provincial government were to step up and provide capital dollars for new projects, TransLink probably doesn't have the funding to be able to operate them and to have those projects in service. And so this is a very significant issue, a very significant challenge. It's not one that is materialized all of a sudden. It's been because of many years and decades, in fact, of kicking this can down the road. The reality is that the finance department at TransLink will tell you there is no road left to kick that can down, and TransLink will either need to come up with a new funding formula, which has to come from the provincial government because of legislation and their authority, or else they're going to have to significantly reduce their operating budget, which means very drastic cuts to service in the Metro Vancouver region. So I hope that over the next bit of the election campaign, the parties will turn their attention to that. It's always good to hear about projects, but that is the most important issue facing transit in the region.
And you're concerned about a lack of increased funding after 2025. The service cuts that TransLink has warned of is as much as 50% of bus service, 30% of SkyTrain, 30% of Cbus, and maybe all of West Coast Express. I mean, how possible is that?
It's very possible. I've heard some commentators say, "Oh, this is a stunt, and this is just the mayors coming up with a doomsday scenario to scare people." No, that's simply not true, because this isn't us saying this. This is the finance department of TransLink, which is completely separate from the mayors. We don't control TransLink. This is TransLink and their finance department saying, we've run the numbers. That's what we look at. We don't look at politics. We look at numbers. And this is what the math says. And so when they've brought that information to the mayors, we had a decision to make, which is, do we keep that quiet and hidden from the public and hope for the best? Or do we share with the public the exact same information that we've been given, which is this is the reality? And so, obviously, we've chosen to make people aware of that. I think that was the responsible thing to do. And now it becomes the responsibility of the provincial political parties to say how they would address this issue. Because again, TransLink is derived from provincial legislation. The province created TransLink. The province controls TransLink's revenue sources. So the solution to this is going to have to come from TransLink. Now, the mayors are willing to be partners, and we want to work with the provincial government to make it happen, but they really need to step up.
Now, you talk about the parties. The BC Conservatives say, they blame what they call mismanagement by the NDP, and they would like to see an accountability audit of TransLink's finances. And they say they would also provide a stopgap funding and then develop a long-term plan. But an accountability audit saying, putting it back onto TransLink, saying we need to look further into the books themselves. How accountable does TransLink need to be for its management of its funds?
Well, I think TransLink does have to be accountable. And in fairness to TransLink, because they recognize the challenge that they're faced with, they have come forward of their own volition, pardon me, with $90 million a year in operating savings by reducing positions, eliminating positions, achieving other savings and efficiencies. So, that's a question for TransLink to answer. I don't control TransLink, nor do any of the mayors. I would say that we agree that TransLink needs to be accountable and transparent, and I think that they have shown that they're taking steps to do that, and they've looked inwards for savings. But I can tell you that the scale and scope of the challenge is not going to be avoided just by an accountability audit. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, and I don't have a problem with it, and they can do it. But at the end of the day, it's not going to, you're not going to escape the fundamental issue, which is there is a broken funding model at TransLink, and that's what needs to be fixed.
And so, given those funding challenges, what do you make of the BC Green Party? One of its key promises, top promises in the platform, is to make all public transit free for riders. What's your reaction to that then?
Well, I think it would be fantastic if we could do that. It would be great if many things that we currently have to pay for were free. And I understand and again appreciate the sentiment. Do I think it's realistic based on all the facts as I know them and where we are? No, it's not. It's not realistic unless the party is proposing such a significant increase in government revenue that they would be able to pay a very significant expenditure that would be required to make transit free. Now, I didn't see in that promise any details of how they would do that, but I would suggest to you it would require a significant increase in taxation right across the board to be able to generate the level of revenue that would be then required to be transferred to TransLink to eliminate fares.
Is that really the root of the issue, that as much as TransLink needs funding from the province and the federal government, that it's also a user pay system, it's also something that can be funded by increased taxes? Are users, are residents really willing to face that? Yeah, and is there reticence or reluctance to go that route?
Well, it does get into a little bit of, I guess, the philosophical discussion around how do you fund these services? Do you fund them through, general taxation and a belief that, there's a larger societal benefit, or do you fund them more through directly on the individuals who are benefiting from the service, or do you kind of do a mix of both? And that's basically where we're at right now.
Right.
There is obviously some support that's provided to TransLink out of general taxation. That comes through property taxation through the municipalities, not through the provincial government and income taxes. And then, of course, there's fares that are paid as well. And right now, fares cover, a fairly small part of TransLink's operating budget. The majority of their funding comes from property taxation and gas tax revenue. Gas tax revenue is declining because you have an increase in number of EVs. So therein lies one of the challenges. But yeah, I think you're touching on, really a bigger discussion, which is how does government wish to fund services that are obviously required? These aren't nice to haves, these are essential services. And whether it be healthcare, education, transportation, the list goes on, what is the right balance between funding through taxation and funding through user fees, in the case of transit, through fares?
Do you there's maintaining TransLink and not going into the service cuts that have been raised as possibilities. What about expansion? Where do you think we need to expand? We heard from the NDP yesterday saying, a rapid transit line between North Shore and Metrotown and Burnaby. Where do we need to expand to alleviate congestion in Metro Vancouver?
Well, I think you raise a fantastic point. It's kind of a sad reflection on where we're at, that the discussion is about how do we maintain the status quo, because quite frankly, the status quo is not serving our region very well. It's not serving the public well. Buses are overcrowded. Many people are being passed up by buses. SkyTrain is incredibly crowded at certain times. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the system as it currently stands has not caught up. And so we want to move away from trying to salvage what we currently have to expanding service, because that's actually what is required when you look at our population growth and when you look at what the province has mandated with respect to increased housing density. So on that question, there are needs right across this region. If you look at the fastest growing parts of Metro Vancouver, you of course have to look at south of the Fraser in the Surrey and Langley area. One of the projects that's been identified by the mayors is a BRT, a bus rapid transit, along King George Highway in Surrey. There's another line that's identified that would serve Langley to Maple Ridge, which is also another fast-growing community. In my own neck of the woods in Port Coquitlam in the Tri-Cities, there's a connection along Lougheed Highway, which would connect Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, Port Coquitlam to Coquitlam Center. And then, of course, there is the North Shore as well, which is suffering from significant congestion and a real challenge with respect to the bridge as well. So there is certainly no shortage of needs, and I think almost every community in this region can make a strong argument that they need to see investment to provide their residents more options, and they are correct in that assertion.
I was going to say, and we're back to the question of how do you pay for it? Mayor West, thank you so much. Good to speak with you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for having me.
Brad West is mayor of Port Coquitlam and chair of the Metro Vancouver Mayors Council. We are asking you, what are the public transit needs in your region that you want to see addressed in this BC election? Our numbers are 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Now let's head to Peter in White Rock. Hi, Peter.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What are the transit needs? We heard a little bit from the mayor there, but what do you think needs to be addressed?
Well, I think the mayor is right that pointing out that the fares are only a small portion of the entire budget for transit, number one. So if we had to tax corporations or raise property taxes on the rich a little bit, they could probably afford it. The benefits of doing that are obvious. Reduce congestion for those of us who still would have to drive, reduce pollution, which would translate into better health for everybody. And when it comes to addressing, issues in BC of poverty and so on, in addition to providing, decent welfare rates or whatever, we can provide free services so the people who are the poorest would benefit the most. And whether we're talking about children or the elderly, whatever, they can access more services, community centers. It's a bonus for everybody. And it's really just a matter of finding who in BC, as well as, say, from the federal government, can pony up the difference.
So you like this idea of the free public transit?
Absolutely. And I hope the NDP picks up on that, because it's the smart thing to do. It's also the long-term solution, because we can't be dealing with these crises every year while the climate crisis gets worse and so on. We need to act, years ago. But this would be a great step forward for doing that and help so many people.
Peter, great to hear from you. Thanks so much for the call.
Thank you.
That's Peter in White Rock. And let's head right into the Fraser Valley. Clayton is on the line now in Surrey. Hi, Clayton.
Hi.
Hi.
I think what I would like to see is some more intelligent planning. I currently don't hear anything of intelligent planning. Rapid bus lines up King George. I mean, all they're going to do is going to be stopped at every single red light. It's a ridiculous idea. What we need is some actual rapid transit, meaning we need some ground rail train so that we can actually complete the projects without spending multiple billions of dollars on an elevated train system in an earthquake zone. That's just completely ridiculous. What we're missing out on is all of those employment opportunities that people in the valley can't actually get to because they don't have a vehicle, they can't afford a vehicle. They need to get to better paying jobs, et cetera, et cetera. There's no bus service to get them from an outlying community such as Maple Ridge, Mission, Abbotsford. Let's face it, the growth is going to be east, not west.
Certainly, from housing costs. And so are you confident at all about the SkyTrain extension, the Surrey to Langley SkyTrain extension?
Absolutely not. All it did, it was already planned. It was already costed at I believe $150, $200 million for some rapid rail, ground rail. And for whatever reason, McCullum yaks that, and we still haven't even seen anything in the ground. We haven't seen any building. What we need is something that's on the ground. We need a mix of stuff. The SkyTrain is not going to serve the entire area. And when I say the entire area, I mean the entire Lower Mainland. People can't afford to pay $1 million for a one-bedroom bachelor suite in Vancouver. So they move to the valley. They move, they buy, they rent in the valley where they can afford, but maybe they still have jobs. Maybe they have medium-paying jobs, but they can't get to it because they can't afford a vehicle.
Yeah.
Whether it's electric vehicles, gas vehicles, the funding model, sure, may need to be changed, but I think ultimately the planning needs to change before anything can really result in any kind of a measurable result, because essentially the more buses you put on the roads, the more congestion there's going to be.
Okay.
I can't get into a bus. I can't drive to my job sites.
Yeah.
I can't carry tools, and so many others can't.
I hear you. I hear you, Clayton. And it's an interesting point you make about is the transit that they are planning, how feasible is it? How, I guess, appealing, and will it attract more users so that you're reducing congestion on the roads when it comes to cars and vehicle use? Clayton, thank you very much for the call. Good to hear from you in Surrey. Let's actually go to South Surrey now, and Dieter is on the line. Hi, Dieter.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. What are the transit needs you want addressed?
So the comment I'd like to make is the revenue coming in. Now, part of the revenue has diminished because there's a whole bunch of EVs not paying any gasoline.
Right.
Because they don't need it. But part of the gasoline is TransLink. So TransLink is losing out on that amount of money. And also the road tax. Now, I see EVs driving on the road, so why are they not paying for that? So I have a solution from my point of view that tackles both. I think they should also pay TransLink subsidy, because all of us pay TransLink, regardless if you have any, because when we drive and get gasoline, we pay for that. So what you do is when you do your ICPC once a year, you have to declare how many kilometers you have. So
it's like a road use tax.
Some sort of road use tax, like they do in England and other places. And why should the EV owners, who are not exactly poor, get away with this tax-free and also get an HAV lane for free?
Yeah. Isn't it, though, an incentive to turn to EVs, which are, which don't emit greenhouse gases? Is that not kind of the point?
No, so if you can't fund TransLink and they have to cut services, how many people are then forced to do some other, go back to cars or something? So the incentive is actually a neutral. Sorry, it doesn't wash in my books. But the thing is, and we can't even afford the electricity now. Hydro has to go buy electricity elsewhere.
At times, yeah.
So we're paying for it.
Dieter,
so pay a surcharge when you do your ICBC. Someone can figure out what it is.
Great. Such a great conversation I've had with you. Thanks so much for the call.
No problem.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you in South Surrey. And let's head to the island now. And Lynn is on the line from Victoria. What are your thoughts on transit needs and the attention that needs to be paid to them in this election, Lynn?
Oh, hi, hi, Michelle. I would like to say that bus or rapid transit, public transit, benefits everyone. From the lack of pollution, goes down to healthcare costs, the lack of or the less infrastructure needs if there's less cars on the road. And if we can pay for it, if we go stop subsidizing oil and gas, which we know has to be reduced, our use, and if we go after those who have offshore accounts and pay no taxes at all, we can pay for this. It has to come. We just can't go on like this. And those are solutions as far as I'm concerned. It's a necessary future or present step, and it'll help the working poor, mostly women who have service jobs and have to come home even at night, and it'll stop people having to hitchhike and then get killed on the road as Highway of Tears, etc. No, its time has come.
Really good to hear from you, Lynn. Thanks so much for the call. And I have about a minute left, but Jack is on the line in Ashcroft. Hi, Jack.
Oh, hi. How are you this afternoon?
I am fine. Yes, go ahead, and then please make your point.
Oh, well, I just wanted to follow on. A lot of the discussion has been around, Metro Vancouver and Lower Mainland Transit. And that's not to say that's important as that area grows and there's a greater need for transportation, public transportation. But I represent an organization that manages 2 small rural systems. And the rural areas have public transportation needs as well, too, particularly over the past number of years with reductions in Greyhound, et cetera. But unfortunately, the systems are somewhat kind of micromanaged by BC Transit, who is a partial funder to these contracts. And we were just advised recently that our contracts, which we've had for close to 30 years, would be terminated, and that they would likely be going out to a bid, and they would be blended with some of the larger centers like Kamloops. Now, the upshot of that is the service tends to decline, or the cost goes up for some of these small municipalities that struggle with their their financial abilities in any event. Yeah. But what was profound was the lack of communication with the leadership of BC Transit, both their board of governors and their senior leadership, where we were just announced in a PowerPoint that this is the way it's going to be. Now, they've since backed off that a little bit, but no consultation with local government,
Jack,
no consultation with operators.
I feel like we need to give you a call back to follow up on this because this sounds like an important conversation. I'm so glad you called in. Thank you. That's Jack calling us from Ashcroft, and lots of emails coming in as well on this. Laura Lynn writes, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was easily navigated public bus transportation from Victoria to Campbell River and vice versa? Thank you for that. Lots of emails. We'll put them together for you for tomorrow. Thanks so much. You can send them to us, bctoday@cbc.ca.